Behind me is a 2,000-year-old library built by the Romans. It's just one of the most incredible structures that you'll see along the ancient stretch of civilizations here in Turkey, which we're going to take a look at. Let's get into it. Kia ora, hello, we are A Couple of Kiwis, and welcome to the first stop on this ancient civilization tour. We are here in Troy. Yes, the Troy that you are thinking of with Brad Pitt.
The big horse.
And the big Trojan horse. What? Throughout the city of Troy here, there's 9 layers of civilization dating back as far as 5000 BC to as recently as the Byzantine Empire, and they've done a really good job at marking it out with Roman numerals of the number so that you know which part of Troy you're looking at and how old it might be. The sail up behind me there, that is marking where the land was before excavation. So everything from there down they've had to dig up and find themselves, and that's just remarkable because that's 10 metres up in the air and they've had to dig that far down. So this section I'm walking through now can be dated back to over 3,800 years ago, which is incredible. And this is where the original gate used to be, and they've got it on a slight angle with another wall behind it, and that was because they didn't want anyone running in with a battering ram to knock the gate down. So they made a really tight angle so that no one could get any momentum, so the city was safe. So just behind me there you'll see farmland, but back 3000 BC that was actually where the ocean was. So Troy was built right on the ocean, and it was a trading port, so people used to dock their boats here when the winds were not in their favour, pay the fee, stay here and then carry on. But now there's thousands of miles of land and farmland. Would be lying if we said Troy didn't have any inhabitants. There are wild dogs everywhere.
There's a commotion behind
and
us.
they are causing quite a scene because they are play fighting and people think they're actually fighting, and they chase people.
If you're not used to dogs, Turkish dogs are huge.
Yeah, they are.
So they're just playful, and if you're not used to them, it's quite scary.
Yeah. So behind me here is the largest house in all of Troy, and they believe that this was the palace. So when Achilles arrived at Troy and called out Hector, Hector would have left the palace here, through the city, out the gates just down there, and out into the battle against Achilles. And now that you can picture it, it makes it even more real. So cool. Right, that's it for Troy. We're on to our next stop, Pergamon. Okay team, welcome to Pergamon, an ancient city on top of a huge hill mountain in the region.
Our bus wasn't allowed to drive up here, so we had to take the cable car, which we love, and we take the cable car to a lot of places, don't we?
Cable car is just so much fun. You get a really cool sense of where you are and a view around the place. So we've taken the cable car up here, and now we're going to go and explore this ancient city. Just remarkable, first of all, how they built it up here, and I'm sure we're going to figure that out while we're here, but I can't express how high we are. It's huge.
Wow.
I don't even know where to begin with this. Our guides filled us in on everything. But first of all, he said that it's not well known, this place, in terms of all the
tourist buses and stuff up here.
Like when you compare it to Ephesus and the other more known sort of ancient ruins, this place is just absolutely incredible. So I'm going to do my best. We are going to do our best to go around and just sort of fill you in with what's happening here, because
I'll film.
There's a lot going on. Essentially, we start at 800 BC, that's sort of when they can date this back to, and then through time, mostly we are looking at Roman ruins. Although it wasn't completely destroyed, the Romans would have just built on top of what was existing here, right up into the Byzantine and Ottoman Empire when there was an earthquake here, and they sort of just moved away and settled in the valley below. So I'm finding myself just walking around, just making noises, just like I'm just going like because you can't put into words how incredible this is. Photos, videos, yeah, don't do it justice. And even when you're here, you're trying to contemplate, you're trying to fathom how this existed, how it's still here today. Unreal.
It's more like how before like cable cars and pulleys and roads, how they got all these like massive stones and blocks. Like, we are quite high up. It's insane.
So this area here was like a big forum, a big open area with columns, and this is where the people would come to discuss politics and learn, and there was a library next to it with over 250,000 pieces of parchment and I suppose books and that sort of thing where they'd learn. So this was a very educated sector of the area. And now we are in the amphitheatre. Now this sort of section of the city probably would have existed back to Greek times, but the Romans would have added to it and probably enhanced it somewhat. This amphitheatre would have held 10,000 people, and they had a wooden stage which they could move and position where they wanted to, and it just sat on little wooden struts that went into rocks, and they had various rocks and holes around the place so they could pick it up, move it wherever they wanted to. Do I need to say any more?
Well, that concludes our first day exploring some of the ancient ruins around the wider Turkey, and this was a highlight to top it off.
This was magic.
Put this on your list.
Day 2 tomorrow, and we'll catch you in Ephesus.
Day 2, and our first stop today is the ancient city of Ephesus.
Now there's a lot of history here, so we're going to go through and have a look, but it's one of the most famous sites here in Turkey if you're wanting to explore some ancient ruins, and there is an absolute highlight. So let's get started, get our sunblock on, and go and have a look around.
To the left of me we have like the traditional baths, like kind of like what we saw yesterday in Troy, and to the right of me is the concert hall. So it kind of says to us that recreation and leisure and socialisation was really important during that time, and they were able to build connections really easily.
So the city had natural defences on either side with these huge big mountains, so it was kind of filtered down here, and if they could build a wall at one end and the other end, then the city would be safe. And they actually walled off up the top of the mountain too, so there's these huge big walls 10 meters high up around the mountain. So it was a pretty impenetrable city, and anyone game enough to have a go would have to have a go from the top of the mountain, which would have been a massive task. So there are some archaeologists digging behind us here, and archaeologists started digging here in 1870, and they're still going today, over 150 years later, still finding new parts to the city. It's pretty hot to be digging right now, not jealous. So we're just walking through the old public toilets now, and it used to actually be a social gathering. So if you went to the bathroom, you got your mate to go with you and you had a bit of a chat. As you can see, they're all open, just sit next to each other.
High five.
Bit of a crappy experience if you ask me. Okay, we've made it to the centrepiece of Ephesus. Behind me is the Library of Celsus, built in 200 AD. It's a 3-story library, and it is just absolutely magnificent, as you can see. But a really cool story, and it still remains to be true or not. But there is a tunnel linking the library underneath here to the brothel. And the story goes that the men would be telling their wives or telling their friends, hey, I'm just going to go to the library. They'd go into the library, they'd go into the tunnel, come under and visit the brothel. Whether that's true or not remains to be seen, but all of the structure is there to suggest it. But have a go at this library. And just in case you thought that was going to be the end of the magnificent buildings, we've got one more for you. We're here now at the theatre, which would have sat 4,000 people. You can see exactly where the stage would have gone because there's a stage there currently, and it gives you a perspective of how magnificent this place is, but also how remarkable it is that 2,000 years later they are still using it for concerts and performances even now. If only the Romans could see that. Okie dokie, our last stop on the ancient civilization tour is Hierapolis. Now this place is famous for two reasons. The first reason is obviously it's an ancient Roman city, but the second reason, and the reason it was built here, is because of the famous calcium castle, cotton castle they call it, a huge calcium deposit, and this whole region is full of mineral rich waters, magnesium and calcium mostly, so that's why the Romans built a civilization here, a city here.
This area is very thermal too, so similar to New Zealand where we're from. We've got a place called Rotorua, which is very thermal from the outside. So we're now here on the terraces, the cotton castle they call it. It is white because obviously it's laced with a bit of calcium residue. I have to say it's very, very touristy. I would advise getting here very early so you might have the place to yourself. There's photo shoots going on, but it's a great view, so definitely worth the visit, but just think about your timing. So when you come to Pammukale, you also have the option of taking a swim. So it's a place called the Antique Pools, and they call it the Cleopatra Pool, which is still calcium and magnesium deposits within the water, so it's still got those healing properties. It is extra charge though, and you'll see obviously when we were over in the terraces, some people were swimming in the terraces anyway. So it's up to you if you want a normal pool or a natural pool. And our last stop here in Hierapolis is the magnificent theatre sitting right up on top of the hill overlooking the whole city. You get two things up here. You get an incredible view of the ancient city itself, but also a view of the whole region with the mountains in the background. It's amazing up here, and the stage and the setting itself is so well preserved. Like, you get a real sense of what it must have been like to sit in the stands here watching a play, watching a concert. So there we have it. We hope you've enjoyed our video of all the ancient cities and the ruins in Turkey. Not all of them. No, there's plenty more to see. These were the stops that we made as part of the tour that we were on, but they were absolutely incredible and the most popular along this route that we've done. Me not being a history buff, this was actually really enjoyable and I learned a lot. I do recommend going with the tour if you can, or purchasing audio guides at the sites so you actually learn more about the history of the places. Along with the sites that we've gone to, we obviously haven't seen all of it, you know. There's still parts of it, there's other temples, there's other buildings we haven't seen. We've just tried to highlight the coolest parts for anyone from history buffs to people like Ash who didn't really know much coming in. So we hope you've enjoyed the video. Yes, comment below if you've got any other further recommendations for ancient sites within Turkey. Otherwise, give this video a big thumbs up and don't forget to click the subscribe button for more Turkey series from A Couple of Kiwis. Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks for watching. That's cool.